Okay, welcome back to the channel, everyone. I have another special guest with us today, Cecilia Granda-Scott. Hello, nice to see you, Ceci.
Hi, nice to see you again too.
So Ceci did both PF and now APTA. In PF, she got 10 bids, was top 10 at Nats, and also coaches Southlake or has coached Southlake since then. In APTA, she is currently our APTA president. Was eighth team of the year last year and also quarterfinal at Nats. So thank you for coming on with all of your very deep wisdom and debate experience. I'm excited to
Thank
pick your
you.
brain about this.
Absolutely.
So
Happy to be.
thanks for being on. So my first question for you is to introduce you a little bit. How would you describe your debate style in both like PF and now in APTA?
I think they're not crazily different. Um, but I think that I was a little bit, I feel like of the last like bastion of like the old tech debaters. So, or kind of the old, I feel like now I call it like traditional tech debaters. So definitely still would consider myself a tech debater. Lays were not my friend a lot of the times. But I definitely was still reading like 900 word cases my senior year and had not bridged the like 1,000 word case gap. And I definitely still preferred kind of these like narrative-y style cases. So would often, even if we were reading like two or three contentions, a lot of times they would like central on kind of like the same premise, or so it would be like three links into one impact, stuff like that. And I definitely think that that was the style that also ended up being the most competitively successful for us. We'll get into this a little bit later of how I think my junior year of high school, I kind of tried to like join the game of the like super, super tech things, and it really like did not work for us. And then when we kind of, I think like we're more true to ourselves, we end up being more successful. I think in APTA, similarly, I'm obviously someone who I think that if you like watch me do APTA, you're like, yeah, she probably did PF. Um, so I definitely I like to say that I'm like, I don't think that I am like a fun person. Like a lot of people are like, Mac, you read such like fun random cases ideas, and I have definitely I'm like, I love a like macroeconomics debate, stuff like that. But I definitely still think that so tech, but I'm not too crazy. And I like my jokes. I think, I'm a fun person to debate.
I would agree with that from my experiences debating you. What is like your favorite APTA case? Also, wait,
Ooh.
before that, I can you describe to our channel what APTA is? I think I've had a few APTA people on before,
And
but
you've never like done the
yeah,
introduction
I
of
don't
what
know.
APTA is?
I need to
Okay,
do it now. Yeah.
APTA is the perfect debate format, actually. But I think it's a really interesting mix of both like PF and then like world schools. So you have the world schools style of the round is like every single round it's a different topic, and you have like this house as the like opener to every single topic, and there's no evidence. But it has the PF like more speed and then like the techiness. So you're having like super like often like the fast techie debates, but like every single round it switches. So you just get to debate about like literally anything and everything. And I think that that is really cool. It's really fun. And you still get to have these kind of like thinking about strategy, thinking about writing good cases, but it doesn't get boring. And because the speech times are so much longer, I think that you can really, really go into depth on topics, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, 100%. What are cases? What does this deal with cases in APTA?
So, the vast majority of tournaments are cases tournaments. So, you get assigned government or opposition by like the computer software. So the government gets to set the topic and then bring their case. And then op gets 15 minutes to prep. And then you just go. So Gov, even though like you can't use evidence in the sense that like you cannot cite a statistic or you cannot say that my argument is true because the author said this, but you do have like a pre-prepared about like 1,900 word case on whatever topic that you want. So I think it's cool because it allows like you to go into like the research rabbit holes and talk about the things that you want to talk about, and then half of the time you then get to go into like the really niche, in-depth things that like other people really like.
Yeah, I could see APTA's been accelerating as well. I remember the word count that I was told when I first wrote was 1,500. So,
Oh, definitely. I think it probably depends, and I think that what is still good about APTA is that um I think that there are definitely like very good teams that are out here like reading like 1,400 like 1,500 word cases, and then there are faster ones that are like let's hit 2,000 and like see what happens.
yeah,
But I think what's good is that both types of cases can like still win. And I probably have like equal win rates on like the older, kind of slower cases that I wrote in freshman year versus now, which
yeah,
I like.
makes sense. Not to leak too much, but what would you consider your favorite case?
Okay, I don't think this is leaking too much, because I feel like I've read it often enough that, it's okay. But it's this case, that, so it's this house regrets the mainstreaming of ballroom, terms.
Oh
So
yeah, we did a practice round on that. Yeah, I remember.
oh, yeah. So actually, no, we did a different, we did a practice round
Okay,
in a different ballroom case, but I have
okay.
two. Um, but the ballroom is basically these like it's kind of like drag competitions, but specifically created by like Black and Latino queer people in Harlem in the 1920s. And so words like slay, hunty, queen, like those are all like terms that originated in the ballroom. And obviously, like now, like we hear these words and they're very much mainstream. So the case is basically like we regret this happening and we like wish that these terms had kind of stayed in this like insular community. That's probably one of my favorite cases.
What about the
But
case makes it your favorite? Also, like, if you have two of these cases, what's the like
oh,
emphasis?
the other one?
Or
Well,
I,
so the other one is about, it's not about terms, it's about this like specific, this is also cool about APTA. You get to like time space things. So this is like it's 1969,
oh,
and
right,
who
right, right.
should this like bar association partner with in order to throw a drag ball? Um, so that's the other one.
Yeah, it's
Sorry.
coming back to me of a little bit
Yeah.
remembering. What's the interest in ballroom since you have so many different cases about it?
Yeah. Well, I think like as a like Latina queer woman, like I really, think that it's interesting. And sometimes, there are I think it definitely is like a strategic case.
Mhm.
Um, Oftentimes, which I think is another cool thing about Opta is that you can really like like be very strategic about what cases you read on specific people. So in addition to the fact that it can be very strategic to read, cases like these on people who are like not versed at all in these topics, I think it's very fun because it has both practical implications, like we can talk about what it means for this community to often, have people come into their spaces and what are the practical implications of that. And then there's this other layer, this like principled layer of like, what does it mean to own language? Can you own language? What does it mean to steal language? And so I really like debates that have both the like principled argumentation and the practical implementation. Especially because then in the back half, a lot of times it's like, well, which one do we go for? And then how do you weigh between the two? That I think gives both a lot of like good strategic choices going into the back half because you have a lot of optionality. And I think optionality is good.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, this is like bringing me back. I need to go back and do it open at some point soon. But yeah, if you're watching this and you're considering doing debate in college, you should
Like,
consider APTA. It's like I describe it as like there's a few different kinds of college debate. I feel like APTA is the college debate of freedom. You've got like policy is like I don't know what to call it. It's like the technical, the most technical maybe, the most evidence heavy type of college debate. And you have BP, which is like the most like intelligent college
yeah.
debate. But APTA is just freedom. It's just like you could do whatever you want, and the other team has to debate you, and you could like talk about anything. It's wonderful. Um,
Yeah,
and you
for
can use
sure.
any argument style you want. Like that's the thing. Is like I think in all of these other kinds of debate, I was
Yeah,
talking about this with another person. I get frustrated because it feels like there's like this very narrow circle of what's considered legitimate argumentation or what's considered legitimate knowledge within that debate. Like especially when you get into more insular types of events like college policy. Like I was talking with some policy debaters and they were frustrated that like whenever you enter policy, you're not allowed to innovate in the space at all. Like you have to follow and copy the top teams, but then as soon as you get labeled a top team, then suddenly it's okay. Like suddenly, oh, it was them who did it.
right.
Oh, okay. Then it's an okay argument. It's like you get positions that were like everyone laughs at when you read at first, and then you get better, and then you read it, and then suddenly it's okay, and then other people do it. And I think that APTA transcends that to some extent, just
I
because it's such a melting pot of different debate styles that it's hard to like. I feel like judges feel much more uncomfortable constraining a particular type of argument style. It's like
Yeah.
you get like all of the world school stuff with like mechanizations and like good comparative and counterfactuals. And then I'm also over here reading like these weird like linguistic tricks about how to interpret like the specific words in the topic. And it's like you meld that all together and you get
Yeah.
APTA.
And they're all allowed and accepted. And I think that that's cool that there's almost still like geographic diversity for sure, or even like thinking about specific teams, like this is their strategy. And everyone has different strategies, which I also just think that, especially like when you're kind of competing at the top level and you're like prepping before a tournament and thinking about all of the different teams, and that like you have to adapt to every single one of those teams, and you have to actually adapt to judges, which I don't really think happens as much in PF anymore. And
True.
I think that maybe it's a harder, but I think that makes it so much more interesting and probably so much more, educational
Yeah,
if we believe debate is to be educational. I think that
sure.
adaptation is good.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree. It definitely gives you some portable skills in like a really interesting way that I think a lot of other formats don't.
Yeah.
But enough yap about APTA. Let's go back to PF. So I just asked you what your favorite APTA case was. What is your favorite PF case? I guess like
Okay.
lots of questions here. Like, what's your favorite PF topic? What was your favorite argument? What was your favorite case?
Okay. I think it's probably two of like arguments.
Hmm.
That I really am like, I always think back on myself and I'm like, I was so smart. The first is on the 2021 February West African urbanization topic. We had this argument about how the like World Bank and IMF pushed countries to switch to a model of cash crops instead of food crops and then importing in foods, which ends up making them super dependent on food imports. And then that hurts countries when there are spikes in global food prices and then they like can't afford food. Um, and that was really fun. And I like knew a lot about the food econ and like this is the entire case. Like the entire case is about food. And I just thought that was like really fun. And then the second is on the 2022 no, January topic of drugs. Which
Yeah,
is that legalizing drugs increases the demand for cocaine, which uses a lot of child labor in the Andes.
nice.
Um, and
Not,
funnily enough,
I'm not.
no, bad, but like it was a great argument. I think because it took like a stock link of like, oh, you increase the demand for drugs and had like really cool like impact argumentation that no one really knew how to respond to. Um, I actually saw someone like a month ago from high school PF and he was like, you read that argument about child labor. And I was like, and you remembered it. It was that cool.
True. Yeah, these are really interesting. I feel like it's definitely, at the very least, when we were debating, when you were debating, it was definitely a meta. And I think it still is to like read these arguments that are just a little bit more specific than other people are getting. And then they like suddenly their brains turn off and they don't have any blocks for it. So then like,
Their brains totally turn off. And it's
I had
great because I think when it is, like the like stock with nuance, I think it's often stalk enough that especially like judges and like lay judges, especially like they've heard a very similar argument beforehand. So I think they're very comfortable with it. And it's never actually that complicated. Um, but it's like nuanced enough that most teams aren't like able to like entirely respond to the full argument. So I think it's like the best of both worlds.
Yeah, that makes sense. People these days, I think, are too scared to run these kinds of arguments on lay judges. It's weird. Like, I feel like we're almost like over adapting in the worst way. Um,
Yeah.
like people view lay debate as just dumb debate now, and so then they just run their dumb case instead of like a smart case that makes sense in front of a normal person. Um,
Yeah.
this point about like they're used to similar arguments, I think that resonates with me a lot. And this is something that is a good point to teach people because I think that like it's so true that when you're debating a position, like you're actually debating the sum total of all of the similar positions the judge has like judged in a previous round or thought about before. You're not just debating like the one in this round necessarily, especially when it comes to lay judges because they don't have as many different like things to baseline off of. And so a lot of it, like their experience and their judging changes pretty dramatically round by round. So it's almost even worth it, I think, to like go back and see like what positions they've judged before.
Oh,
And if
yeah,
they've
for
judged the same argument like over and over again, if they've picked it up a lot, like it might be more strategic for you to run that argument, but also it gives you this kind of flexibility. Like if you know they've judged this argument, you can run the same argument with some difference, like some things that make it very different, like child labor is an impact or something. I remember this happened to us. You probably didn't even debate this topic. Oh my gosh. It was the UNCLOS topic, the law of the sea.
Oh,
Um,
I know what you're talking about, but yeah, I didn't debate it.
oh, that's wild. I'm such a boomer at this point. But anyway, on that topic, it was like the US should accede to it without reservations. I think it was recently, it came up as an LD topic. But all of the negs were, there were like a few different neg arguments. One of them was like, this will give companies more legal certainty to go to the Arctic and do drilling for oil, which is bad. One of the arguments was, we will get like sanctioned in the court of the law of the sea for like violating something. And so I remember Esme and I, my partner, we combined these two arguments into like a third separate argument that didn't have anything to do with either of them. We said like Russia is going to bring us to court in the law of the sea and then use that court case to steal our drilling technology. And then they are going to use that to go to the Arctic and drill for oil. And like it was great because we would run this like stupid argument that had like one author in front of lay judges, and the other team would just read their drilling blocks or they would just read their like court case blocks, and none of them would apply, and so we would just laugh at them. But the lay judges would vote for it. It's
Yeah,
like it sounds like the most squirrely argument, and it was, but it's something that they would vote for. Like I think people need to recognize that lay judges have brains. Like it's not only the most convincing, like most
yeah,
rhetorically persuasive arguments they'll vote for. They also can understand like technical debate in the real sense of technical, not in like the sense of we just call whatever is happening in the fastest parts of the circuit tech.
yeah,
And it's
for
strategic.
sure. Especially because I don't know, like I do think that maybe less so with online, but a lot of times like the parents who are, debate is realistically an expensive activity, and I think that oftentimes like the parents who are like bringing their children along to these activities, like to do debate, are actually like often like very highly educated people. Who often like oftentimes like know a lot, and sometimes that can be annoying, right? When they like intercede and like intervene and like put their own beliefs based on like what they know, but we like they're not 5-year olds, like they're adults who like have jobs and like graduated high school and like know things.
Yeah, I think it's like people need to understand that like almost all of these judges, I mean, this is a social construct or whatever, but almost all of them are smarter than you are. Like you shouldn't be like talking down to them and being like, so the first way to vote for me. Like no, they're like these are people who have many more years on this earth than you do and like again, are often
Yeah,
very highly educated. They know lots of things. They read the news. You don't read the news, like you should be able to read lots of different arguments on them. And I think people just don't use that opportunity as much as they should.
for sure.
What was the best round you've ever had in either PF or APTA?
I think that the best round that I can like recall at least was my senior year Nats, like around 11 or 12 against Plano West MZ. This is a Taiwan like trade deal topic. And it felt like a little bit of this like throwback round, this like traditional tech debate. So it was like tech, but it wasn't like insanely fast. There was like good, smart weighing that we were that both sides were making. And you know, I think that I also like very randomly had a like physical book, and one of their cards ended up like being from the book. And I like went up in my summary and I like waved the book around and I was like, I literally have their book. Um, and it and like the RFDs like were good, and I just remember like being like, this is like what PF debate is about. In my, you know, last tournament ever. So that felt very nice. I guess APTA, I think it was maybe Wellesley finals last year, I think was really nice. Both I think a little bit, I think I now look at it with a little bit of sentimentality because it was my first tournament with my now current partner who was a novice at the time. And we like ended up winning, and there was like this like sense of like, wait, I think that this like partnership could actually be a thing. It has now obviously been a thing. So it was very like happy to me. And also I just felt very, very good about my last speech were very, very messy rounds, and you feel like you're, you know, the PMR, so like the rebuttal in APTA, like pieces together the entirety of the round and actually like boils down like an hour of like very dense speeches and boils it down, and everything's like organized well. And I just remember walking out and being like, wait, like maybe I'm good at debate.
That's such a good feeling. What kind of debate did your partner do, your now partner?
So she did a mix of LD, so mostly circuit LD, and then some world schools. Like she would go to, you know, some tournaments, and like she went to like nationals in
Yeah,
world schools.
that's an awesome mix. I feel like that's exactly
Yes,
what APT is about, you know.
yes, for sure.
So you guys are, I guess you're the president now, so you'll still be competing next year, going for the Toady Run.
What? You know, Mac, if I told you I'd have to kill you.
Okay, okay, we'll keep it under wraps.
Yes. I feel like we keep saying that we're keeping it under wraps, and then everyone's, and I'm like, what?
Well, good luck in whatever these mysterious goals you have next year are.
Thank you. Thank you.
My next question for you is also about rounds. Again, you can answer PF or APT or whatever. What was your most memorable round that you lost and why?
So this is gonna be an APTA. Clearly the APTA like propaganda has gotten to me at this point. But it was my first abs tournament. It was Fordham. We somehow like made it to like varsity quarters. And then we like got curb stomped by Ale and Ahmad. And I finally realized like, okay, there's like a whole other level of APTA. Like this isn't just like PF 2.0 that I'm kind of like sleepwalking through it. This is a whole new format. There are so many things I need to learn to get good, but I'm actually excited about it because I just saw two people who are like miles ahead of me at
Yeah.
debate. And I think that by the end of my like career in PF, even though there were teams that were certainly like I would openly admit like they are better teams than me, I think it was like the margin I never actually felt was like that much larger. And
Mhm.
then when I got to APTA, I was like, oh, they're like a whole other level. Like what are principles? What are reparative obligations? And then Ollie like made an analogy of like he made a parallel between like a shirt and like giving it to someone, like, and that how like how is that the reparative obligation? And I was like, oh my God. But that made me like very, very excited about APTA, which clearly has now propelled me forward 2 years later.
Yeah.
So I'm so
That's
excited
funny.
about
I feel like this is like a universal experience because I had the exact same experience where I came in first tournament, did really well. It was the novice tournament. I went with Sai Karnati from university and we won. We swept. And then very next tournament we went to Harvard and we got like absolutely annihilated. We hit John and Yannick. You probably don't even know either of these people. Do you?
John Youssef?
Yeah. Oh wait, you do know John Yusuf. Okay. Uh, and we just got like just blown. Like it was so obvious. I think if there was a panel of 15, we would have gotten 15 0'd, you know? And I was like, damn, like maybe there's something to this APTA stuff. Maybe it's
Yeah.
not just like, directly translating from PF and I'm, good because I did PF and everyone else is bad because they didn't do PF. Um,
That's exactly how I felt.
yeah. But yeah, that's lit. I'm glad that it has propelled you forward now, president of APTA. So clearly you've done a lot of debate. You've had a lot of learning experiences along the way. I want to know what are the things that made you good at debate? Like, how did you learn to improve through PF and APTA?
So I think that, I mean, obviously, like practice is like very, very important. And I definitely think that also I almost like to consider, and I think that everyone has like different like learning styles, to be clear. But the one small thing I think that I will get is that practicing with people who are the same level as you is never going to actually make you better. And I think that this is especially hard when you're at this like three-quarters tier or something like that, where like all of your friends, for example, like you guys are all kind of like at the same level, and then the top people seem so much better than you. There's like, I don't want to, like, there's no way that like that wouldn't be useful. Like, I would just get curb stomped. But I
Yeah.
actually think that getting curb stomped is really, really helpful. And so it is always worth it to like send the random DM to someone much better than you and get curb stomped and then have someone judging you who is going to curb stomp you in their RFD.
Yeah,
Um, and
definitely.
so that's definitely one thing that like make practice rounds count, and actually like make them serious. And they don't have to be like you can obviously joke around like a practice round is supposed to be fun. But the time that you spend in practice rounds should actually be taken as seriously and as an ability to like grow from just as much as the finals round of a tournament. That's like I feel like the more boring answer.
No,
I
that's a
feel like
great
the
answer. I think that's good. Um,
um the other one that I would want to say is I think that what personally like made me, get very good at PF and now in APTA is cases.
mm,
And cases, 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 cases. And I'm not saying like write five stock contentions on each side. But I think what kind of made that what like clicked for me in PF was go this like research rabbit hole I like to call it is like reading like 30-page academic articles and going to page 7 of Google on a single search. So much about a specific subject. Um, Often because I think like academic articles who like write these like academic authors who write these like huge articles on subjects do fantastic literature reviews. You get like further possible research opportunities. They like give you insights on other authors. They like write front lines to possible critiques on their arguments and how their research either directly responds to it something or like skirts around generic responses. They're like college professors who, if you email them, will sometimes answer. So we emailed college professors. And like sometimes they ghost us, but like we had one or two authors who like would respond and like answer our questions. And
wait,
I
that's
think that like
awesome.
yes. Did you ever read like Mello on like
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mello responded. So
That's
Mello was the
crazy.
article who wrote about like tiered pharmaceutical prices
Yeah,
on both like the 2021 like pharma topic and then the like Medicare for all. People would read this argument about how like big pharmaceutical companies were very nice and they would do like tiered pricing and so they would sell their drugs at like lower prices in like developing countries. And yeah, we emailed her and she responded and answered some of our questions.
like
But I think
what did you ask?
I like don't even remember at this point, truly. I'm sure that I could look back. And I'm pretty sure I made a TikTok about it because I used that song that was like, why don't you just call Taylor up? And I like had a screenshot of us like emailing Mello being like, hello. Um, but Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head.
That's pretty iconic.
But for sure. But I think that like having these like nuanced arguments and knowing them super, super well is very helpful in winning rounds because I think similar to what we were talking about, because like nuanced cases is that like most generic block files aren't going to respond well. And like when you know the case so incredibly well, like in your brain, you're spending less prep time thinking of responses. You can like shift your weighing in the moment very well. You can like easily find those moments where like parts of your opponent's arguments like implicitly concede or like strengthen your argument. So I think that what made me good ended up being that like I just knew so much more about the topic than I think like anybody else did. And I think the same thing has applied to APTA. Like and I'm a nerd and track these things, but I had 101 APTA rounds this year, roughly 50-50 gov op rate. I lost 7 gov rounds, and
Damn.
of only 2 of which were like my actual cases that I
Yeah.
wrote. So when you write a case and you know everything about it, you do not lose on those cases.
Yeah, I feel like PFers specifically are like former PFers are so good at this specific thing. Like other APTA people, they rate like 100 case. Like you get like Nick out here with like the 100 case book. But I feel like they don't go quite as deep on each one. But from PF, I feel like we're used to going like, well, okay, what are they gonna say? What are all the blocks I can read? What are all the front lines? Like, how can I go infinite speeches
Yeah,
deep?
this is definitely true. Like my like case documents are definitely like have a bunch of like responses to things and then have, different back half strategies that I've like thought about. And sometimes they're like, okay, like, oh, if they drop this, here's how like we can link into the like probably their argument. Sometimes it's like very written out. Sometimes it's just like random thoughts that I will like jot down. But they're definitely like quite like long and like prepped out. Like I think I'm like a cases debater.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Same. I was always more cases than motions. I like my win rate was like dramatically different in these tournaments. Um, it's unfortunate all the opens are now motions. I have to like I can't go back and terrorize the circuit with my.
Online.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'll find one at some point. But I think what you were saying earlier, the first point that you gave about doing practice rounds against people who will curb stomp you, so true. The one story I have about this is, do you know Will Logue from
Yeah.
Williams? Yeah, I guess there's two. I remember I met him when he first came into college into APTA, but I think before he even started taking classes at Williams, he knew nothing about debate. Like he literally hadn't done any debate before. And for some reason, this guy like wanted to debate against like all of us. So like I think the first round he ever had, and looking back, this is quite a boys' club, but it was him and me against Nick and Ahmad in front of Audie. It was like these names probably don't mean anything to the audience, but that's like that's a crazy first round to have ever of any debate style. Um, and then he just like did that like 100 times over the summer, and suddenly he's like breaking varsity, which is kind of unheard of for people who have never done any debate before. I mean, not unheard of, but like that's a crazy improvement that he saw. And the way that he did it was just by getting annihilated by people who knew more about debate than him, like over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It's possible, but you have to go and like actually say hi to people you think are scary and be like, can we do practice rounds? I did the same thing before Nats in my senior year. We did quite well that tournament. I think that most of it was because we did 36 practice rounds before against 36 different teams. So how did we find them? We literally just I went on Facebook and I just like Facebook stalked people. And anytime I found anyone, especially people who I thought were better than me, I would just send them a DM. And like looking back, like it's a little bit cringe, but it did help. Like I got so much better at debate in just the time prepping for that topic.
Yeah. And I think also like it definitely feels scary. I remember a DM sent to you last year. But I also think that especially as I get these DMs now, from people like wanting to do practice rounds, and some are literally like, I want to practice like good people. Like, will you please do practice round with me? Is that like I remember the people who curb stomped me and like gave up an hour of their time to curb stomp me. And I am now willing to do that. And I think that most people are like that. Like, I have never like DM someone to do a practice round and had them say no. And so I think that it seems really scary to like DM people, but it is really not actually that scary. And like the worst thing that they can say is no, and like, and then what? Doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah,
So
I think this is great advice. Okay. The next question I have for you is what resources, if any, were most helpful in getting you better at debate? I guess this is more specifically about PF.
yeah. I feel like it's like kind of the boring answer of like watching rounds. And I think that it probably is that and just I mean I guess like practice rounds like I think that is a resource is like asking people to curb stomp you like better people like that is in of itself a resource but I definitely think that PF videos, the tried and true, and flowing rounds. Something I would also do is I would like reflow rounds. So I would like do like an initial flow and then I would like reflow my previous flow.
Interesting.
Especially when I was like still getting used to especially like flowing better at a more technical level and like faster rounds. So I would like do the initial flow of, very fast round, and then I would go back and think about like how can I like improve my flowing? And then that also I think a lot of times like really allowed me to like digest the arguments more because I was like rethinking about them in a more like organized way as it was like as I was like organizing my paper, I think it was also kind of like organizing my mind and like
Yeah.
how to actually see these arguments, how to really understand the strategy of like what is happening, especially in the back half, instead of just kind of like writing down everything word for word.
Yeah,
Um,
that's so true. Dude, I feel like people underestimate the importance of practicing flowing, like so much.
oh my God. Can we go back to flowing? Like
Yeah,
maybe
literally.
it's not the environment because like the paper or whatever, but I really think that it is so much better for debate. I do not understand. Or I think that like and even now like when I go back to judge and in APTA I flow on my laptop on like a Google Sheet template that I've made for myself. But I think that you fundamentally cannot understand how a round operates until you actually like learn how to flow. And when you people are just like starting to like flow in a Google Doc and they're like writing everything down like literally just like on as different like Google Doc notes, I'm like, you don't understand how the round is operating. Like you really don't because you cannot see like all of the pieces as they like move across like the chessboard.
Yeah,
Um, so learn how to flow. That's the best resource actually, is the ability to flow.
100%. And I have a hot take about this that's maybe a bit more controversial. I think this is crazy to say. I think the Google Docs flowing is better at the very end of your career, if you can flow perfectly in your brain. But that's
Yeah, I think you can, and that's why like I think that now like I'm able to flow online because I learned how to flow on paper.
mhm.
And especially like in APTA, a lot of times like for my like rebuttal speeches, like yes, I'm actually writing it out on a Google document and I'm no longer like using my like flowing sheet because I have everything in my brain. But I think that's only because I understand how the round is happening because I like built those like base skills.
Yes, exactly. Dude, I feel like people don't understand this, but like the way I think about any debate round is like I literally have a paper flow in my head. Like it's all just the flows that I practice in PF, just like projected into my brain. Like I think if I didn't learn how to flow, like I would be terrible at debate. There's no way that I would like if I did like the APTA flowing, the I don't know, the stuff that I did at the very end of my career in APTA, where like unfortunately, maybe fortunate, I don't know. To your point, like I was literally just flowing straight down on the document, and it was kind of reverse flowing, like I would write responses instead of the arguments.
Yeah.
Um, but I think if I had started with that, like I would be awful at debate. Like I wouldn't understand any of the interactions between arguments. I would drop everything probably, or like it would be impossible to give like a PMR, for example. Even if I'm quite good at like an MG, like sure you can line by line if you just go straight down on a document, but like you won't be able to do any strategic things in the back half of the round.
Yeah, 1,000%.
So flow more. Last question I have for like advice. is what do you think was least helpful for you? Like, what do you think people should do less?
Okay. I think this is going to initially sound contradictory, but it's not, I promise. Which is that I think in my junior year, and I actually did more prep than I did my senior year, but it was inefficient prep.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that part of the reason as to why this was the case is because I think that we were kind of just trying to like follow what everyone else was doing. And so, on a given topic, we were trying to write 10 contentions on every single side and just like a bunch of blocks, 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 blocks. And all of that was not actually that helpful, I think, because it was a lot of almost like memorization of things. Like I had a lot of, maybe I read lots of articles and my blocks were like really, really efficient. Um, but I don't actually think that I knew as much, but I don't actually think that I knew as much as the topic, in terms of the more like meta level strategy wise thinking.
Yeah.
Like I could tell you 10 responses to any given argument, but I think that if you asked me to like explain like how does an argument interact with another argument like in the real world, like not in the D-Link world, then I wouldn't be able to actually explain that to you. Um, and I also think that cutting that much prep and just like staying up till like 2 a.m. every single morning, like cutting cards, because like you need to, what happens if this team reads this like really bizarre argument, but like it could happen. And we need 10 responses, like just in case. And then the block would never get used, but I, would have like not slept to do it. Also like led terribly to burnout.
Yeah.
And made me just like cranky and upset and very stressed out. Because I was so unconfident in like going into debate tournaments. And so I think when we were kind of like, what actually works like for our style of debate, like what actually is going to be most like true to ourselves and like playing to our strengths, that I think my prep got so much more efficient because it instead switched to the style of I don't need 10 contentions, I just need one contention that I know incredibly well. I don't need to switch out every single round. I just need one contention that is going to beat anyone's responses because it's that good. That I got a lot less burned out and that I we just ended up winning a lot more rounds.
Yeah, that is such good advice. Like, I feel like I wish someone told me that when I remember I did the exact same thing. Like the first time I went to camp, I went to ISD, and then for like literally a month after during the summer, during August, like I just prepped like literally like 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
And we got a silver bid. Let's go. But it wasn't like it was not efficient at all. And the amount of work I was putting into that one topic was like probably like 5 times as much work as I put into an average topic. And we did not get 5 times the results. I know there's diminishing returns anyway, like even if you do the most efficient prep, but it was like way diminishing. It was like a problem. I remember one of the worst tournaments I ever did. This was sophomore years. This was, I guess, before camp. And I wasn't very good at debate. I went 2-4, I think, at Emory after prepping so hard over winter break for this was the Catalonia topic. And I was like, but why? I know all of the names of the politicians in every party in and the like Spanish like Catalonia
Yeah.
dispute. And no one else knows the names of the politicians. And it's like, dude, you're missing the point, you know? So I
Yeah.
think this resonates a lot with me. Um,
Yeah, I think that what ended up, and even a lot of times, like, I think we're also very serious about our prep. Like this had to be done. And then in senior year, even when we would have these kind of like long, winding, like half of it is not actually spent about actually talking about the actual prep, but we would have these like calls to just like think about casing. And then we would like figure out like the strategy that we wanted to read that topic. And then we would just go out and write those cases that actually like ended up being so much better because we just like had this like vision of what the topic was going to be and how
yeah.
like the vision of the rounds that we were going to have and like those calls were like actually the most efficient.
Yeah,
um
that's so much better for sure. We did, I guess one example of this. I think I did this fairly well on, do you remember the offensive cyber operations topic?
yes, I
Yeah,
do.
classic. So maybe there's a distinction we can draw between kind of like whack-a-mole style prep, where like you write as many things as possible, most of them are responses, or at least like you're writing prep that will be used in very specific circumstances. That could be
Yes.
contentions, it could be responses. And then there's like I don't want to say big picture, but more like more widely applicable arguments that you can read in more circumstances. I think that is so much better. So in the offensive cyber operations topic, we picked an AF strategy very early where we were just like, well, what are all of the arguments on the topic? And we just divided them into categories and we realized most of the arguments are about how cyber attacks are bad and they impact that's like an internal link in the argument somehow. And very few of the arguments are about like actual military things. There's a link between cyber attacks and military things. But if we can sever that link and we can say that the military things are more important, then we win. So we just wrote our app that was like 5 links into terrorism and then 2 links into war without going through cyber attacks at all. And then we just read this big overview that was like cyber attacks are they don't do anything, squirrels hurt more people, it's all exaggerated, they don't lead to war, it's like a stupid impact. And we would just farm wins. And of course we needed responses, but what we did, I think was fairly smart, is we just wrote like 4 different reasons why why cyber attacks are also on our side. And they were just random turns that we could apply anywhere because we knew that the entire neg would just be about cyber attacks. So at the very top of my rebuttal, I would read overview, cyber attacks don't matter, also 4 reasons that they increase in your world. And then it was like easy. Like I didn't have to respond to any of the arguments. I still would give like 1 or 2 responses to each argument. But it meant that the prep burden was so much lower because we could just do the same strategy every single time. And it meant that we practiced that strategy more consistently. So the other problem with the whack-a-mole prep is like you prep it for 1 round and you use it in 1 round. And then you don't get good at like
Yeah,
practicing and honing it and perfecting it in future rounds.
for sure. I mean, I think Nats my senior year, we had like 14 rounds and we went first staff in 13 of them. Like we literally and people were like, "Are you guys gonna like they're gonna have your case? Like, what you need to go the other side." Why do we care about them having our case? Like, if you believe that your case is good, you should never be scared of the prep out. Like, you should always just like co have confidence in yourself to beat the prep out. You know, like if you're good at debate, you will beat the prep out. And so for sure, I loved just doing the exact same thing every time, and every time I got better at it. So you know why like I think that the whack-a-mole style where like people change contentions every single time is really bizarre to me because it's basically like it's an implicit concession that your argument will lose to responses. Why are you reading arguments that lose to responses? Why not just read arguments that don't lose to responses?
It's so true. And it's I feel like it's such a bad thing for your own like honing of the arguments. Like if you read an argument in 5 rounds, it will be 5 times better by the end than if you read it in 1 round because you'll like actually you'll have that experience. Like even if it does lose to responses the first time, then you can like prepare for the you can add like a different card to the original case and you can make sure that it doesn't lose to those responses the next one. I think that's like I don't know why people in PF these days are so afraid of prep outs. Like they're shaking in their boots when they think, oh, but what if they have responses? It's like that's the point. That's debate. Like just beat the responses. And it's so much easier than people think if you just think like because I mean the other team has to play whack-a-mole against you if you're worried about responses. And so you will always have put more time into thinking about your argument than they have even if they're writing a prep out, even if they're spending 24 hours on it, you've presumably spent more than 24 hours on it before the tournament. And so it seems like that always should go your way. The only way it doesn't is if this is a brand new position you're breaking for the first time that you haven't spent a lot of time on, and then suddenly it's equal time spent thinking about it on both sides.
Yeah, for sure. I also think that like I think that part of the reason that has like kind of led to this is that a lot of times I notice that, and this is how I also think that like back half strategy has changed a little bit in PF, is that people assume that all responses are like the same level of threat, and that people are just like into like the tech over truth mindset that they think that if they drop a response, it's actually game over on your case. And so
Yeah.
thus responses are scary because if you drop one, then that's it. But a lot of times responses are very bad, first of all. And second, a lot of times like they're generic and they don't actually apply. And I think that like you can concede responses or forget to respond to things and it actually like does not matter if you just like admit it and be like, here's why this response isn't responsive.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like everyone now, like for every single front line is like three carded responses to this block.
Yeah.
Instead of just being like, here's why this isn't actually responsive to the link. Or like this is maybe mitigation, but it doesn't actually matter. Like the argument is still being won, and like here's why. And I
100%.
think it's bad.
It's so bad. It's like, oh, that's probably the biggest thing I've been trying to teach these PF kids is like you don't need to worry about conceding responses. I think there's two ways to think about it technically, because some people have gripes about this. They're like, okay, but if you concede something, then you did not cross-apply your case. So you can't like cross-apply case to the response later. I think this is nonsense. This doesn't make any sense. Like, if they're reading a response that doesn't actually answer your case,
Yeah.
your case does answer the response. What's happened here, if you like don't say anything in the speech immediately following their response, you've technically conceded it. What's happened is you have conceded a thing, and they have conceded a thing as well. And so neither of these things has been shown to apply to the other thing yet. And so there's room to explain how they interact with each other later. They're both conceded things, so it's the same rationale as why weighing is allowed in summary, for example.
Yeah.
Like if two things are conceded, then you have to find a way to explain how they interact in some way later in the round. All you're conceding is the content of the response. You're not conceding the implication of the response unless they have like a whole big section on the implication and you do concede that. Then you're screwed. But this is so easy to get around. Like just read one, like group all of the responses. They're not terminal. They don't actually apply to our case, then move on. And then it's like that's 10 seconds or less, and suddenly the concessions don't matter anymore.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay,
Not every response is terminal. That's okay.
true. Okay, the hottest take is I think zero responses are terminal, but I don't know if we're ready for that.
I don't know if the circuit is ready for that, Mac.
Um, how much time do you have with me? Because I am about to get into some crazy shit.
I like fall asleep at 2 a.m. Like we're
Oh,
we
don't
can
say
keep
that. This is
yeah,
dangerous.
maybe not actually 2 a.m., but I have time.
Okay, well, the next kind of set of questions I want to ask you about, we'll call these like paradigm issues. So I want to hopefully construct from the bottom a technical conception of how debate works. This is a bit ambitious, but I think we can do it. So the first question that I think we need to ask is, what does it mean to win a debate? Like, what are the ingredients involved?
So I think the first is weighing. I think that the first thing that I look to is what argument is the most important. And if you are losing, and I tell my kids this like all the time, mostly when I'm yelling at them about like their summary organizational structure. I'm like, I like you need to lead de defense last because if you just win your weighing and you win your case, why I'm not looking to the other person's case like at all. Um, and so I think that you need to win the most important argument of the round. And then I like look to the actual link level and think like, do you win the impact that like actually triggers a swing? And I think it's like gotten, I feel like I feel like there's like the answer that should be true in an idealistic world. And then there in terms of like how I evaluate links. And then there is the like here's what everyone has decided like happens in PF and there's nobody that's actually doing it any different, so I will just like vote this way. Which is that technically I think that when you win a link, you win the impact that like your link actually says. So like if you win that there is an increase in tensions, then you get an increase in tensions. Does that actually lead to and then the weighing is on nuclear war. Um, so I wish that in an ideal world, I you would only ever actually like think that links are true to the extent that they are actually argued to be true. And I think that this doesn't actually happen. So typically, I feel like I tend to just like, all right, your link chain was uncontested. So I guess I will believe that an increase in tensions is leading to extinction. Um, yeah, I think that's how you win a debate. You win the most important argument.
That makes sense. Dude, you're speaking my language. I've been trying to tell people this for years. It's like no one listens, but it's so
Yeah,
true.
I really think that you like when you talk to old people, I actually think that most old people are all in like the same boat. Like we're all like low-key beating like the dead horse together.
Yeah. It's
And then the like young people are like looking at us and being like, they're crazy and old.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But yeah, I mean, you only get what you get. You don't get extra just because they conceded it. It doesn't suddenly fly up to 100% chance of war just because like they didn't give a response that lowers it to zero. I feel like that's the biggest problem with PF is everything is zero or 100. It's either all true or none of it is true. And there's like no nuance in between. And it's all determined by what's conceded and what's not. It's so silly. I think that if you realize that, and if you realize that there are people like us, lots of people like us, who also realize that, you can tell us that in the debate, and it all changes. The whole strategy changes. You can start saying, like, wait a second, your argument only says there's an increase in tensions. There might be war, but there might not be. But my argument definitely guarantees this. And so it's probability weighing.
Like
Crazy.
nobody does impact defense anymore.
Yeah, it's like only the
Like
only
do
impact is no extinction. It's like who cares?
No, people like I feel like really used to do impact defense on like things like
Yeah,
nuclear war. Like people used to
yeah,
be like, here's why like mad is a thing.
yeah,
And no, and we just like assume like we just like let people get away with like internal links and impacts that we used to not anymore. And I don't really know like how to solve this problem, but I definitely think that it is a problem. And I think that it makes for much more interesting debate if in order to win, because it's like a two-layered thing. It's like in order to win, you have to win your link, and then you also have to win your impact, and then you have to win your wing. There's like so many pieces that are like
yeah.
moving around. And I think that's way more interesting than just like everything now and just like, well, did they win the link? And like then I guess they get everything.
Yeah. It's so weird. But okay, so that's how you vote. You evaluate weighing, and then you say, is the link one? Then I grant you weighing, and you win, right? What happens if there's no weighing at all?
Oh my God. Um, I think that I really like hate the idea of intervention. Um, and so I guess I don't think that if there's really like no way, like there's like nothing, then I guess I think I have to like probably look at like what argument I think has been like won the most.
Hmm.
Um, like did someone win their argument? That probably like the first place I vote is I probably do like go to both sides and like see like who won their link. And if someone has like actually won their argument, then I'd probably vote there.
That makes sense. Yeah. So maybe like, for example, I've heard people say like, well, you win your argument, you win a mitigated version of your argument. So this one is first. This one's also weird though, because like sometimes it's so obvious that the mitigated version of the argument is still bigger. It's like, okay, you win.
Oh, like if like both teams win their arguments, but one argument, oh my God, hard. Um, I think that I probably would vote for the person who did win their argument more, only if so, because I think that like if you think about the role of the judge as to like vote for the better debater, then I think that the team that won their argument cleaner did
Yeah.
the better debating in that round.
Yeah, that's
Their, argument choice was like worse coming from the offset, but someone's case does not.
okay, okay. I have an interesting question about this then. So, if that's true, is a viable strategy in front of you, like pretending we're in this horrible scenario where there's no weighing, is a viable strategy to say, like, there's a difference in saying, yes, your mitigation is true, versus saying, this is not mitigation because you are just making an observation about what our original argument was. We were never intending for it to be as big as the thing you mitigated. So for example, let's say I'm reading a warming scenario about like air, maybe it's air pollution or something. And they say climate change does not kill everyone. There's two possible responses. I could say, shit, you're right. We have a smaller impact than we originally asserted. Or I can say, yeah, we never said it kills everyone. We just said it kills 100,000 people. This is not mitigation. You're just saying we don't get an extra impact on top of what we asserted. Fine. We never said that. But it's weird because these things logically should not be different. Like the logical resulting argument is the same. But one of them is mitigation and the other one is not. It's just a non-response. And it seems like in the absence of weighing, the fact that a link is mitigated bears on your eventual decision.
Well, I think that saying that climate change does not kill everyone, is that like mitigation on the link though? I think that's impact defense, which is different from like winning the link.
Mhm.
Um, so I guess it would depend on what like the other team's argument is, but I think that if a team says that their impact is climate change, and then everything that happens like after that point on my flow is where this mitigation or non-responsiveness matters. But if they win that impact of climate change, I think that they've won the argument.
Right.
Um, and the things that happen after that is maybe mitigation on the impact, but I think that's different from mitigation, like from like responding to the link. Like they've won the argument.
Yeah, yeah, I'm on board with that, but I feel like still the same problem should apply. Like if everything is exactly the same and one team's impact is mitigated and the other one's isn't, and there's no weighing, then the impact defense becomes a proxy for weighing.
Yeah. Then that's probably fair. Like if the other team has won entirely, like 100% every single part of their argument, then I think that
Yeah.
yes, like a response that is on the argument counts as a
Right.
response. The other teams like should probably win.
But then it's weird because you could respond to it in the same resulting way, just in one way saying it is mitigation, and in the other way saying we never claimed that. And then it
Yeah,
changed.
but like you feel like you did claim that.
But okay, what if you actually legitimately didn't? What if you were like, what if the impact was climate change kills 1 million people, and the mitigation says because of other factors, it won't kill everyone? Then you can clearly just say, yeah, we never said it did. Like,
Oh, okay. So like your original impact is 1 million people, and then the like mitigation is climate change doesn't lead to extinction.
yeah,
Then you're like, well, we never said it led to extinction.
yeah.
Okay, then I think that's not responsive. But I
Interesting.
think,
Wait,
yeah,
okay, so but this is logically weird, right? You gotta agree this is logically weird because that
yes.
means if the original scenario added a card that said also on top of 1 million people, it might lead to extinction.
Oh, okay. I
Then
understand.
suddenly this response, like the addition
Then
of that,
it does count.
and now they lose because they added that card because they added
Honestly, yes.
argument.
Wait, yes.
That's weird though, right? Like,
So, yes, but I think that in this world in which there's no weighing, and I've decided that the role of the judge is to vote for the better debater. Then I think that the team that, like, let's say the impact was 1 million, right? 1 million people. And, team B gets up there and says climate change doesn't lead to extinction. Then I will punish them for reading a non-responsive impact thing if it's called out.
okay,
Like if team A is like, this is stupid, this is not what our argument is.
yeah.
The impact is clean. Then I'll be like, well, team A did the better.
Okay,
Team
this
B
is interesting.
did bad debating.
Right.
But Team A did read this leads to extinction. Team A reads that this leads to extinction. Team B does impact mitigation on the extinction argument, and the mitigation is totally clean, it's unresponded to. Then Team A cannot just say like, you hurt our like second impact, but like not our first
Wait,
impact.
why not? I feel like that's viable too. Like, what if, okay, scenario two, they have the same stuff, but they split it into two contentions.
Oh my God.
Like it's contention one is warming leads to 1 million deaths, and contention two is warming leads to extinction. It's the same shit, it's just a different impact. And then they say they mitigated contention two, but not contention one.
So does Team B in this case, like in summary, be like, the mitigation like counts for both of them?
No.
Mm,
I mean, maybe they do, but then you get the same thing, right? Because then A can plausibly say, no, it doesn't, because it doesn't apply to our first contention. But I'm unclear here why. Like, what's the difference between having two contentions that are redundant except the impact and having one contention that is redundant except for having two impacts? Because, like, they're the same argument, right?
no, they probably are, and I think like I mean I know that you've given an argument about how like technical like it all leads. It's like all a big circling question is ever like really true.
But I
Um,
think there's something to be investigated about it. Like, I'm not a total skeptic of technical debate. I'm a skeptic of taking it to its logical extreme, but I think that technical
right.
debate is useful. Yeah.
I think it's useful. What is the difference in two contentions? Well, can I just give everyone like 28s and like call it a day? Can I give it every
But see, that's the thing is that's where we're left, right? Like, given current, because I think maybe this is presumptuous, but I think largely you're following what technical norms are, descriptively. Like other people would probably give me similar answers. And I think it does make logical sense for where we are. But my thing about it is like, does it really make logical sense in our technical models? Like I know this is what people do, but it seems somewhat arbitrary. Like it seems to imply at least that the treatment, the very subtle differences in treatment of arguments, like literally the names we call them, can decide the technical objective outcome of a round.
Oh, but like I think that is arbitrary. Yes, but it's part of debate.
Yeah.
Like I think that the way in which you phrase arguments is part of what makes like you a good debater, for example, that I would like choose to like reward or punish.
Yeah.
Um, like I think it's when people get away with, sneaking in like defense by reading probability weighing, or, all sorts of these other kind of like rhetorical flourishes that people add into debate rounds, that is part of debate. So, yes, maybe on the like purely, like if I was like a robot and was like actually purely just following this like tech over truth, then maybe when take your, hypothetical to its logical extreme, it doesn't make any sense at all. But we're also not robots. And so I do think that that rhetoric is actually part of debate. And that's why, yeah, like it doesn't make actual sense, but we're not entirely logically like moving the pieces on like the checkerboard, is I guess what my answer would be.
Yeah, I think that's at least somewhat satisfying because I think we can continue to use a coherent model of technical debate, even if we acknowledge that that model has assumptions that are logically questionable. Like, I think that the main problems that I have are about uh, the consistency within the model. But if we accept that there's a problem with the model and we're just like, there's nothing we can do about it, then as long as it's consistent within it, we're fine. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So, next question, also about weighing. This is something I've been struggling with. All of the people I know, including myself, probably including you, if I had to guess, we look at weighing of one issue at a time, like one impact or one clash or whatever you want to call it, but not two. Like you don't add two together and then that outweighs one, unless you have very rare circumstances where like the kids tell you to do that. Why is that the case? Like, why do you think it's more logical to sequence one by one instead of adding the total utility of one side to the other or like comparing them, you know? Like, for example, why not go for three contentions and say the sum total of all of them is greater than the one that the other team extended?
Oh, that's stupid.
But why? Why
So
though?
I know. Well, so I guess the first part is like why do we do this? Why do, but I think that part of the reason as to why we often are and like why we often end up only weighing one issue versus another is because like speeches get shorter and there often is only like one issue to weigh like at a time actually. And so like I think it's very rare where there are like two different weighing mechanisms. Um, based on the other. And I think that actually like your model would be bad for debate because I think that if everyone just tried to like win five arguments because the sum total of all of them weighed together is more than their opponents, then that is like a worse model of debate than really well weighing one piece of offense versus the other.
Why
So
is
I
it
don't know.
like less clean or something?
Yeah, but okay, so I feel like all the old heads, with arcanes and such, complain about speed, right? Like we
Yeah,
think that
yeah.
people are doing quality over quantity over quality, and we're just pushing out as many contentions as possible. But at
Right.
least right now, in the back half, we're still collapsing to one, maybe two arguments. Imagine if we try to do this like sum total of weighing thing that you've got going on there. Like everyone would just like be collapsing on five contentions. And I think that's like not very good. So I think that actually like forcing people, like by doing the weighing, sequencing it one by one, actually forces people to realize that I have to be able to like in a one-on-one battle of weighing, actually beat my, opponent's weighing. So I don't need one weighing mechanism. I need three weighing mechanisms. And that forces people to still collapse. So even if it is perhaps like weird when you like logically think about the affirmative world versus like the negative world. When
Right.
I think you boil it down to like individual debates, like that sequencing thing leads to a much better like way of debate.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree, but my question is, why do we care about what's better or worse? Like, for example, spreading is worse for debate, but it's strategic. So we don't say you're not allowed to spread in most cases unless you read theory, right? Like, you wouldn't vote someone down for spreading if both teams spread. You wouldn't, or if one team spread and the other team didn't make a fuss about it, like, you would not intervene against that. So my question is, like, why do we care in this instance about it being a worse model of debate?
So I think it's worse in the sense that probably what happens is that if nobody starts collapsing and people are just like doing one piece of weighing on four contentions, then I think that you sacrifice other parts of the round.
Mhm.
So like defense and like winning your links. And like I don't know, reading uniqueness. Like in order to go for, several arguments, you have to sacrifice making those arguments as like well. And probably we care about that because we are attached to like the current parts of debate. And so to see those like like taking away what like we like right now is like sad to us. That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. But then what you're saying is that, like, logically, there should be no problem within our current technical model of attempting this. The problem is that it's not what we do, and it would be hard to pull off. But there's not
Yes.
a logical flaw in it.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair that there aren't logical flaws in this, which is probably, I mean, I think it's similar to like the last hypothetical, which is that like, yes, and like if we were all robots in a purely like logical world, like it doesn't make sense. Or in this case, this weighing thing would make sense, but we're not robots, we're people. And so we
Right.
also have to think about what are the norms of like the technical world that like we live in, and what do like humans with, attachments to certain like aspects of debate actually want and actually care about. And I think that realizing that we live in a world that is not actually a purely technical world, like thinking about people actually does matter a lot, which is why people don't, do this weighing strategy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Would you vote for it if someone did it? I mean, like, I guess such a trivial question because it's one of those things where it's like, obviously the answer is yes. Like, would you vote for something if someone did it and they won it? Like, yes. The answer is you can fill in
Yeah.
anything in there, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but I think it's an interesting thing to think about. Like, how skeptical would you be of this approach if someone just like told you in Final Focus, like, well, we have two arguments and we weighed both of them on magnitude. They only have one argument. And so we think that we have two extinction scenarios. That's more than one.
Well, do you have two extinction scenarios or do you just have two links into extinction?
Well, it's like
Because they're
two, they
different.
add to each other, right? Like the probability of one plus the probability of the other. It's like if each one is 1% chance of extinction, now we have 2% chance of extinction.
But I think that you still probably have to win that extinction is important. Like if the other team is reading defense on extinction weighing, like why do I care about extinction? Like why do I care about the fact that you have like two, a
Yeah,
2%
yeah, yeah.
probability of extinction? Though, yeah, I think that in that in case is slightly different. I don't know if I like totally. I mean, ideally, the other team is good and has also like red weighing impact, weighing defense on like both of the arguments. So
Yeah.
them added together, you kind of have to, I think you still have to like evaluate the almost like the total weighing impact of argument one after the weighing defense, and then like the total weighing impact of, argument two after the weighing defense, and then see whether that adds up to the other one. I think I'd be really shocked if it happened. And I think it would probably be very like impact dependent. But I don't think I'm entirely like unopposed to
It's
voting on
wait,
it.
okay. Now that I think about it, it's also weird because you can split things into more arbitrarily greater number of things. Like for example, like we could probably come up with 10 different internal links between warming and extinction. Does that give you 10 extinction arguments? Or does that give you one because it's all just warming, you know?
Well, I think it depends what you weigh. Like, what is the weigh?
Well, I guess the weighing would be like, let's pretend we're both going for extinction. Then I say there's 10 different ways that warming could cause extinction. There's only one way that nuclear war can cause extinction.
Hmm. I don't know. I think that you're still like even if there are slightly different internal links, I think the larger link is like warming into extinction. And so I think it's really easy for the team reading nuclear war to like group all of the internal links and be like, well, the premise is still that warming leads
Right,
to extinction is why
right.
nuclear war is more important. And I think you could probably use like the same way. Like I think it's probably quite easy to like group all of the internal links.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's interesting stuff to think about. Okay, okay. So we've talked about weighing. What about if someone loses all of their arguments? Like, does weighing matter? Like, probably not, right? Like, we look at weighing first, but what if the team that's winning the weighing has dropped terminal defense?
Oh, you go to the other side.
Okay, so then the other team just wins if they have offense.
If they have offense, yes.
Yeah, okay, so that makes sense. So we have two ways you can win a round. You can win kind of like this, like 2-1 kind of way, where like you both have a score on the board, but yours is bigger because you have weighing. Or you can win like 1-0 as it is. So that's like terminal defense. So those are the only two ways you can win a debate round in front of you.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm like scared what the
No,
next
I don't
question is going to be.
I'm not gonna try to like, oh, gotcha, I'm interested in this. I think we're building up. I think we can build from here out to other interesting questions.
All
Uh,
right.
So the next question I have is, in this framework, what is the role of evidence in debate? Like, what does evidence achieve to help you do one of these two things?
Okay. I think that evidence can help in honestly anything. Like I think that it can help you prove an argument, it can help you disprove an argument if implicated well. And I mean sometimes not that people do it often, but sometimes it can even help you in the weighing.
Yeah.
Card weighing, gas.
So, okay, you're using an interesting term here. You're saying help you in all of these. Does that
Yes.
imply that, like, it is essential, like it's a requirement for some of these things, or that it is like what does help mean? Because I
Yeah.
feel like we're in technical debate, there is sort of a necessary binary. Like you either win or you lose. You either win your argument or you lose your argument. You either win terminal defense or you lose or you win weighing or you don't. And so help you is sort of weird because it seems like it could only help you win if it moves you from losing to winning, right?
I think it often I think that evidence is probably like 80% of the way to get you to be winning an argument. But I think that, for example, um, to get my ballot, right? Like you have to extend the right pieces of evidence. You have, in the first place, you have to not only like extend the right, like all the pieces of evidence that you actually need, like there has to be like a proper extension. Um, you have to like theoretically like prove why that evidence is, better than like the evidence in your opponent's responses. All of your link evidence doesn't matter if you don't extend like an impact and explain to me like why that matters. So I think that like evidence is probably what is it? A necessary but insufficient burden.
Okay, that's good. Is it necessary though? Because we both do APTA. We don't use fucking
I was gonna say like we don't.
cards. So could someone run a purely analytical contention? in PF and win your ballot?
And win my ballot. So
Assuming, they win it, whatever, like the line by line goes their way.
they win at the line. So I think it's just hard because the way that you, because I think that if other people, for example, have evidence, I think that there are like indicts essentially that they can make on the analytics
Right.
that say that you should have a much higher like of burden of proof to like vote on this argument because you don't know that the things are actually true because don't trust a high schooler, trust this like scholar instead.
Sure.
Um, and so I think that then it's hard to prove analytics, to win on analytics because I think it's hard to assertively say that nuclear war is going to happen. Or that, this leads to like an X% chance of anything happening.
Yeah,
Because those themselves, I think like the metrics in which we often have to like gauge how much an argument matters or like whether an argument is actually going to happen are often these like statistics or whatever, or like the use of authors, like the use of evidence. And so I think it's hard to just kind of like go off a like 14-year-old's word that
okay,
this
I
thing might
I have a lot to say about this, but the first is a question. It's like I feel like there's a very big difference between treating evidence as something that is a requirement for an argument to exist versus treating evidence as something that is incredibly helpful for an argument to exist. Like that difference to me is huge. And so what you're describing is that it might be quite difficult to win the argument if you don't have evidence, right?
yeah.
Like if they have evidence that disproves your argument and you have no evidence that proves your argument, you're screwed, right? But that's if they have evidence to disprove your argument.
Yeah. I think that realistically, and I think that maybe it is the case that this position is not something that I would have had 2 years ago and is really something that I've only, have now in college in a non-evidence-based format. Um, but I think that yes, like in a world in which everyone is just reading analytics, that to be clear, actually like makes sense, like make like logical sense.
Right.
And when those analytics, why not vote for them?
Yeah, like to be clear, like analytics does not mean assertion, right? Like there's a
Yeah,
very, very different thing. You have to give reasons from a point of agreement to
yeah,
explain why things logically entail other things happening. Uh,
yeah.
but
I
I
think I
agree.
vote.
Like I think if you do that, then you can construct an argument without having an author say that your argument is true.
Yeah.
And also, I think this answers to some extent this whole like, oh, but you're just a 15-year-old. What the fuck do you know? Because if your arguments are made using logic, like then I think it's easy for the judge to just like, okay, actually, I feel like this whole like you're a 14-year-old, either A, it requires judge intervention.
Well, I think a lot of times like other people also say it. Like how many times
Yeah,
in
yeah,
Crossfire have I been like, and why do you think that the policy makers like aren't worried about this, just because a high schooler came
yeah.
up with it?
Okay, this is actually interesting though, because I feel like this is asking for judge intervention. Like we never allowed this in any other case. Like if I said, don't trust Ceci's arguments because I know that she's lied in the past, then the judge would be like, what the hell are you saying? Like, dude. But if I said, don't trust any of us because we're all stupid, like for some reason the judge is like, oh yeah, you're right. Like none of these arguments are real. But that seems to be intervention.
Yeah, it probably is.
Why is that a substitute for answering the argument? It's like literally just like
I mean,
hacking your
I certainly never said this, I hope. And I definitely think it's like really stupid whenever people like say these things in Crossfire. I'm pretty sure I'd like always roll my eyes. Um, because I'm also like, dude, like the whole point of debate is to like talk about the
yeah.
arguments. Like obviously like nothing that we're doing here is real.
Yeah.
Like let's just like have the discussion instead of like getting meta about like our ages.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy to think about too. It's like these people, the same people who are saying this are like the people who are constructing like link chains to extinction out of like Medicare for all. They're like, don't trust the other side. They're stupid. They don't know what they're talking about. Trust me. All my authors say Medicare for all causes nuclear war. Uh, and the other problem is I feel like this relies on the assumption that an argument constructed out of evidence is an argument that is entirely evidenced. Like there's so many pieces there, like the gap between cards and the ability to apply a card to a topic. That is also analytical. Like that's all that requires assumed reasons, oftentimes reasons that are not even stated but are required by the argument. And those are reasons that don't have evidence. Like those are reasons that you, a 14-year-old, are also saying. So
Yeah.
why are your reasons attaching your cards to the argument more like less suspect than my reasons, which just don't have the cards but still do the same thing?
This is fair. Maybe you've really like convinced me. I don't know
Let's
if I'm gonna like put this on my paradigm or anything like that, but whenever I next judge around, if someone has watched this video and says, I'm going to now read a case with no evidence, I'm like obligated to vote for it.
or at least obligated not to intervene against it, which I feel
Yeah.
like is a fine like I feel like that should be the default. Um,
Yeah.
but okay, I agree with you that that evidence is an incredibly powerful tool. Um, but I think it's useful to examine how it is a powerful tool. Like in what circumstances is it useful? I think you're spot on in all of the circumstances you listed at the start. Like it's helpful in proving your argument. For example, if they read an analytical response to your argument and your evidence directly disputes the analytic, then easy clap. You know, we have empirics, you don't. So accounting for this logic, it's still wrong. Um, Second, I think it's helpful in disproving an argument for the same reason. I mean, really, these are actually the same thing, proving, disproving, whatever. It's just you win a clash between two assertions if yours has evidence and the other team's doesn't. Um, but then there's another question, like, what if your evidence has no reason and they do have a reason? Like,
Oh,
what?
like a statistic.
Yeah, I think I asked you this like a year ago or something, or like months and months ago.
Yes, I
Um,
think so too. And I don't remember what answer I gave now.
I don't
Let me try to
remember.
think for now.
Like,
Um,
I guess let's root this in a specific example because I think that makes it easier to discuss. What if, hmm, now I'm having trouble coming up with one. What if I say, like, I have evidence that, and I actually did find evidence for this. I found evidence that said high-speed rail increases mortality on net, accounting for like everything. And you have, and I don't have any reason for this. I have given zero warrant. And you have arguments that say, no, it's probably the case that high-speed rail improves quality of life and increases the amount of living people on net and decreases mortality. But you don't have evidence that says that. Then who wins?
um,
And we'll both be good. You know, we'll both like apply our stuff in the right way. Like I'll say, oh, you know, Ceci tells you that there are all these reasons why it ought to decrease mortality, but my card has accounted for them and found that even despite them, there's an increase in mortality. And you'll be like, no, but my arguments are indites of the card's methodology. And so actually, so we'll do both of those things, but then we'll still go back and forth. I feel like it's still a question that's not answered by those applications.
it probably isn't. Um, like how do I judge? How do I like I feel like at that point like the round boils down to this like whose evidence do I vote for? Well, okay, but the thing is that if you're doing all those things and saying that my card like, is an indite on those methodologies, does that mean that your card is going through all of the methodologies and disproving them?
But then does the entire debate become about the methodologies of my card?
Well, I think that if you're saying that none of their, like, if you are getting up there and saying that their reasons do not matter because my evidence accounts for their methodologies and disproves them, then I think that you should also have to prove, like, how, like, why it account, like, why does it disprove it? Like, I think that you still need a reason. Now,
Interesting.
I guess the question is the reason in the evidence or is the reason in your like analysis?
Yeah, yeah. Like I could say, for example, like my author is clearly very smart, and so if this was something that needed to be accounted for, they would have, because my author has a PhD and a team and peer review.
Honestly, I it's definitely a way to do like I think it could work is basically saying that,
Yeah, but
my
this
author
is
doesn't count any things.
this is really weird, right? Because like that implies I can win a round without an argument. Like there's
Well, I
no
think well, I think there is an argument. It's that high-speed rail improves mortality or increases mortality and therefore high-speed rail is bad.
But why does it increase mortality? Like there's not an argument. Like that's just an impact.
Well,
There's no
I
link.
guess well, but I think that if it is true that your author is he actually going through and like accounting for the methodologies, then I think
Okay.
that there is reasoning in that process of saying that like these things do not actually matter.
But this feels weird to me because let's pretend the methodology is like the author does a debate round effectively and just does empirical testing of every argument in the debate round. Like authors like we boiled it down to five contentions on the pro and five contentions on the con. We thought those were the only ones that met our criteria for like a reasonable enough argument because of these tests. And then we tested all of them and we empirically found that like these ones outweigh those ones. But I don't say any of that in the round. Like I only say the conclusion. Like I don't even tell you what the contentions were that the author evaluated. Then what we have is we have effectively a debate round that happened earlier. Like it's the same as if I came into the next round and I was like, well, in the last round, my judge said that the pro won, and we talked about everything in that round, so the pro wins.
I think that if you yourself like do not articulate like what are the reasons, like if you're not doing an argument, then I think that you probably lose because I think that and I mean like in my paradigm, it's like to win an argument, you need a link and an impact. And if you just have like an impact and there's no actual link other than a piece of evidence, then you can't win. Which I think goes back. Look, I said it before. I was like, evidence can help you. It can help
Yeah,
you
yeah,
prove
yeah,
an
yeah.
argument,
Yeah.
but you need to make an argument.
But okay,
So if you're not explaining what the authors actually did, then I think that you probably lose, even if the evidence is good.
this is infinitely applicable, right? Because I've taken the most extreme case. But every question in a debate is also could be a resolution. Um,
Yeah.
like if the question is, does warming cause extinction? That could also be a debate topic. And so then having an author say yes is insufficient, even if it accounts for everything, compared to a reason on the other side, an argument on the other side.
Well,
Like what if our topic was warming causes does like resolve warming causes extinction?
I think that, okay, wait. I really actually think that this, like, the reason as to why this is not the case is because, like, people have just decided. And, like, we're just, like, living in
What?
a society.
No.
We just are. Wait, like, that's actually true. Like, we have just decided that, like, we agree that warming leads to an extinction. Or that we have decided that, like, we agree that, like, authors are mostly correct unless they are indicted. And that, like,
But
yes,
you wait,
everything
wait, but
can be done.
no, no, no,
But
no, no,
people
no, no. No, 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 no. Because you just told me you decided that's not true. Like j just a minute ago, we were talking about another case where I told you we didn't explain the methodology, and you said the author's wrong and the argument would win.
yeah, if you in the debate round don't explain the methodology, I think you
No one
need you
explains their methodology. Like,
eh, maybe some people did
dude,
back in
no,
the day.
like, you want to go on the wiki right now? Let's look at, I don't know, anyone's wiki page. I guarantee you there's like less than 10% of the cards have methodologies that are explained.
Well, but if you are trying to use a card that and you say that the authors account for the methodologies given by like the pro or whatever as to why high speed rail is good, and I think that you do have to explain the methodology in order to make an argument because
Okay,
I think argument to win a debate.
okay.
That's the first premise.
That makes
I
sense.
think you have to make an argument, with a link and a warrant and an impact,
Right.
and then wait to win my ballot. Um, then in this like, is everything just like an assertion? And like, could we interrogate every single like link within a debate round? Yes, I think that that is technically true. but for the purpose of like making debate happy or whatever, or like having in order to not trade off on the things that we enjoy about debate rounds, like, comparing two different links, we have decided to just agree to some assertions. Like that, I mean, most of the times, right? That like climate change, global warming, extinction.
Okay. I kind of see where you're coming from. I'm a little bit skeptical of this because it seems a bit internally inconsistent. But I also think it's necessarily like you can't have a technical model without this inconsistency. So you have to draw the line somewhere. And maybe this
Yes.
is where we draw the line. Like the community just comes to some sort of collective consensus that like this assertion is true.
Yes.
Um, but does that change if the assertion is challenged in a round? Because we have to square this with also being non-interventionist.
Yeah, and I think that to be fair, like, I mean, like, there's a document out there with 11 reasons why climate change is good. Sometimes these assertions are actually challenged and people will vote on like the challenges of them. So I think that yeah, like if someone got up here and was like climate change, global warming does not lead to climate change or climate change is actually good, I would vote for that if it was clean because
Yeah.
I don't want it. But
This
I
is
just think that vast majority of the time, we've drawn the line on certain assertions.
right. But wait, but we don't draw the line if they're contested, right? So then this problem is the same. Like if I say I have a reason why your assertion is wrong.
I think it's more so is that like when both sides draw the line, then like everything is happy. And most of the times, both sides are happy to draw the line at certain assertions.
Oh, I see what you're saying. That actually makes a lot of sense. Hold on. So like at some point we agree on some things, explicitly or implicitly in every debate round. And those
Yes.
agree to that kind of forms the basis of what like the judge is supposed to think in order to avoid intervening, right? Like
Yes.
okay, that actually makes sense. But that means that if you challenge an assertion, it pushes the agreement like down a layer. Like
Probably.
we no longer agree on this, so we agree on something else that's like further down. Like for example, if I challenge the assertion that climate change causes extinction, maybe I'm still implicitly agreeing with the assertion that extinction is bad, or I'm implicitly agreeing with the assertion that like climate change is bad, or that death is bad, or whatever. Like there are still assertions that I agree with. And I think that agreement is required to form a coherent debate. Like you have to agree on things.
Yeah.
If we disagree on everything, like there is no debate round. Like, you will
Oh,
say,
for sure. And I think that the reason why there's no debate round, and I think that this is like the earlier thing, is that in a debate round that is hampered by speech limits,
right,
you cannot do everything because you will have to trade off with things. Those things that you're going to trade off with are things that we as a community have decided that we like,
right.
which is like weighing different impacts as opposed to getting into the nitty-gritty of certain assertions. So we have decided, yeah, in order to have a debate round to agree on some assertions, even though they could be contested. Sometimes it is the case that they are contested, and then we do have to go down that rabbit hole. But most of the times this is not the case because we as a community have decided to agree on some assertions in order to have the debate round that we've decided that
Yeah.
we like.
Yeah, this is really interesting. I think it's not only because of speech times. Like this seems like a fundamental problem with any debate, like even if you have infinite time. Because like, for example, we could disagree on first principles. Like we could disagree on how logic works. Like we could disagree that the word and means like both A and B. And then we're really just stuck there. Because event like any way that you attempt to use to resolve any of the other disagreements becomes a disagreement. And so it's impossible to do any reasoning. You know, like it's like we can't move forward at all. That's actually a really useful way of thinking about this, actually, because it means if you recognize that in a debate round, then the first thing you should do is like figure out what all of the agreements are, and then root all of your dispute in those agreements. Um,
You can, yeah.
yeah, fascinating. But I don't know how much this helps us resolve the problem. Like, I feel like there's still a problem of like warrant versus asserted evidence. Um,
Well, we'll never solve this problem.
yeah, I mean, okay, I think this is worth discussing because um, my opinion on this is that reading a card and using it to beat an assertion, like, sorry, using it to beat a warrant, a logical argument, is this is the hottest take I maybe have ever had, is almost impossible. Um, a card beating a logical argument in many cases is almost impossible, if not impossible. The reason why is because the use of the card requires so many other things. Like the card has assumptions, you would have to explain the methodology. You're not reading the entire card, you're only reading highlights of the card. You have to apply the card to the resolution. You have to apply the card to the argument. You have to explain why the logic of the argument is flawed in the context of the card. And I think there are infinitely many of these things. Those are like eight that I just gave. And I think all of them are not done by the card, which means that's eight different analytics you have to fill in that, and those are what are actually compared against the original analytic. And so I think in almost every case, card versus analytic debates are actually analytic versus analytic debates using a text as a source that you're analyzing.
I go with what you're I follow. Yes.
Like for example, it would be the same as if we both were given like I'm studying for the LSAT right now. If we were both given like an SAT or an LSAT passage, and then like that is just true. Fine, we can both agree with the passage, but we can still disagree about lots of other things. Even the conclusion of the passage. Like even if we take everything, every
Right,
fact,
every aspect of the card true in order
yeah,
to apply it correctly. Like that is still actually an analytic.
right. And you can dispute the logic of a card without disputing the credibility of the author of the card. Like I mean, the LSAT is an easy example. Like we're we're only given cards that are logically stupid, and then we just find out like a flaw in the card, and this is like probably infinitely possible. Like it is fundamentally impossible for a card to like account for everything in in every possible scenario. Like it's just there's limited words in the card, and you're only highlighting some of those words. It's like it's nonsense. So in my view, like the use of cards to always trump analytics is sort of
A good.
silly. Yeah, it doesn't work. And people just sort of are assuming that it does. And I think it's actually a strat. Like there's so many ways that you can get around cards so easily with analytics. Especially like, if you have a smart analytic and the card is stupid, it's obvious. But also if you have a stupid analytic, the card is never going to respond to it. Like no one's writing about that stupid analytic.
Yeah, I think that that's fair. And honestly, I do think that like I think the analytics are like underutilized in debate rounds. And that we should do more of them, and that we should also do indicts because like indicts like
True.
are real.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and we should do more of them.
Yeah. And
But
logical
yeah,
in
I agree with you that. But I think the problem is that this is we're oldies, and I don't think that the youngins like really. Or I think that it is so. And I think that the reason why is I think that there is a like dissonance between like what is norm and what like I don't think that the vast majority of people are doing the like taking everything to the logical extreme that you have in your months in Taiwan. And so I think that everyone just kind of agrees, uh, especially now, like card, and I think it actually goes back to like probably like everyone has just agreed on things. And so people now have just like agreed that like cards matter more than analytics. But I think that if you probably had like the same like conversations with people, that most people would probably agree with you because I think that your argument makes more logical sense. And I think that you used to see in paradigms like, oh, an uncarded like warrant that actually makes sense is going to be an unwarranted card. And I think that you see less and less of that because we have just decided, we've all, implicitly agreed on the assertion that cards are important. Just
Yeah.
like that, but
It's
that
weird though, because this is such a strange thing. I feel like if you phrase it correctly in a round, you can overcome the weight of this consensus. Um,
I think that that might be true. And I definitely think that like if you explained it like this, and I think you probably have to almost like maybe you frame it as like an evidence indict. Like I
yeah,
think
yeah,
you'd
exactly.
have to go into the card and be like, the warrant for this
Yeah.
card, for this statistic, is X. If I respond to X, then the fact that they have a statistic
Yeah.
does not actually matter.
Right, right.
And
And
I
the
just
card
think,
hasn't proved X. Like there's always something that's upstream that's assumed in the card that you can
yeah,
disprove.
yes. And so I guess the lesson behind this is that I think that people should be doing evidence indicts more.
Facts.
And they can be analytic evidence indicts.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And not just like I think when people hear indict, they think like you've miscut the card or the author is not credible or it's too old or something like that.
Actually go into the methodology.
Yeah, like literally
I think that,
logically reply to the argument the author is making.
yeah, because all cards have warrants.
Yeah. And this is infinitely applicable. Like the problem of causality means that no matter how good your statistics are, how good you control for things, it is impossible to prove that there's a causal relationship between two things. Like it's not just like hard, it is logically impossible. And so there's always a way to logically respond to even the absolute best cards that control for literally everything.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad that I've convinced you. I'm hoping to convince other people. I actually have, so I'm debating a policy debater soon in a 1v1 in PF style on the nuclear energy topic. And we're doing like double prep and I haven't told them, but I'm not going to read any cards or I'm not going to go for any carded positions. And so we're going to actually put this to the test and see if it works. Um
Okay.
I
I
hope
wish you the best.
yeah, I hope it works. I'm gonna record it, so I'll put it on the channel. And I hope it changes some people's minds because a lot of people are stuck at this point where they're like, I think a lot of people agree with this at this point. Like they'll listen to this conversation, they'll be like, yeah, that makes sense eventually. But then they'll be like, oh, but you had to get through an hour-long conversation to get there. This is impossible in a round. Like even if this is hypothetically true, like it's so far from the norm that we wouldn't be able to convince a judge in like a 4-minute speech that this is accurate without an incredibly unstrategic time trade-off. Um, and that's the part I can't just like disprove in a conversation. I gotta
Yeah.
actually go and do it and show people. But thank you for walking through this logic with me. Um, I guess I'm done with analytics versus evidence now. Uh, I have a few other questions. I probably have to go in like 30 minutes. Um,
Okay.
but I want to get through as much as we can. So let's do a little speed run of some of these questions. Next
All
question,
right.
what is the role of the pro and the con in PF?
They're the same thing.
Thank you. Agreed. They're symmetrical. Why?
Um, Oh, why? Well, I think that because this isn't policy, and so we're not like the pro isn't advocating for a specific plan or not, or like a way that we implement a policy. It is just like whose world is better, and so they're almost like they're starting off from the same point. Like we have the world of the squo, is the AF or the neg better, and so they have equal like burdens of proof in order to do anything.
Yeah, that makes sense. Why is the pro not advocating for the plan of the resolution?
Hmm. I guess that's just like how PF is. Is that crazy of an answer? Like I just don't think that we are. And oftentimes it's because of like A, we have like value-based debates in PF, which I'm
Yeah.
assuming does not happen in policy. But even then, um, I'm not sure why we don't do plans. I just know that they're like not allowed.
Yeah. It's like, okay, I feel like this is one of those things we just have to agree on. And it's like not because I mean, clearly policy also is a logical system that is coherent. And the question of why we don't adopt policy as a logical system is just because we don't. Like all we can do is look for evidence that we don't. There's not like a particular reason that we don't. So like I feel like the evidence is like one, there are value-based debates. Two, con can go first. Three, the past norms have not done this. Like generations past PFers have not done this and have agreed to this. Four is the NSDA rules say no plans or counterplans. Five, the NSDA rules say no burdens on either side. I feel like that's like that's 5 pieces of pretty strong evidence that this is how.
Yeah. Are
Okay,
there people who think that the burdens are different?
yeah, okay. You've been out of PF maybe for like a year. I don't know if this is true. Are you
Yeah,
still?
I've been out of like I've been out of like circuit PF for I would say a year. I got my middle schoolers,
Yeah.
but
what's happening at the TOC level right now is this very disturbing transformation where the assumptions are shifting to policy assumptions. Um, it's really weird. It's kind
Wait,
of
how does that?
heartbreaking.
I don't understand. It says
Yeah,
no plan, no counter plan. So like, how can we
exactly.
shift?
But the assumptions of the burdens of each side are shifting gradually. So, like for example, people are refusing to read T on the AF because they think it doesn't make sense to read T against the neg, even when the T is not, even when the neg is not topical. Like for example, if con goes first and reads a non-topical position, the pro won't read T. They'll read something else. They'll read
What?
they'll for example, they'll say we don't advocate for the resolution, so your non-topical argument doesn't make sense. Or they'll say something like that. They'll do something else, and it doesn't make any sense. Like it doesn't make any sense at all, and it's not strategic at all. But people's assumptions are starting to get polluted, I think.
That's really crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, I really have no words actually.
But thank you for. I need people to keep saying this so that PFers stop doing this. It's not just me. Okay. Do you flow off of the dock in fast PF rounds?
Off the dock, as in like
As in,
on.
like using the doc, as in, like you look at the document that has been sent, and then you.
Oh, so funnily enough, I'm trying to remember the exact way that this is like phrased in my paradigm. I so the answer is yes. And that is just because I think that things are often like so fast now that I'm an oldie and I like sometimes really do like feel like the need to like have the doc. And just to like look at the taglines. I also sometimes recognize that I think when I know that I have the doc, I get a little bit lazy. Um and like I use it, but I do flow off the doc even though I don't like it.
Yeah.
But my paradigm used to be like, do not send me a doc. Like, I will not blow off of it, and if you are going too fast, then I will just miss your arguments. Um, and then
What changed? Yeah, what changed?
so nobody listened to me. Um, and this is actually one of my hot takes that I wanted to get into, which is basically that I think that people make assumptions about judges based off of vaguely like what they know about them or like the fact that, they see, well, you did PF, so and now you coach, so you must be super tech. And the tech that exists in this world right now must obviously be the tech that you understand and know. And so now I will go 250 words a minute, and just send you a speech doc. And so I then changed my paradigm to I hate reading docs, would vastly prefer to not have it, but I've come to understand that nobody listens to me when I say this, so it's like send me the doc. And then it ends off with I promise that my comprehension is really quite like slower than people think it is.
Yeah.
So send it. But yeah, I do flow off the doc begrudgingly.
This seems like, okay, I think this is one of the fundamental problems, not your practice, but like this idea in general that okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. I think what's happening here, and let me know if I'm wrong, is I think that judges feel a pressure to conform to the current norms of tech debate and not
Yeah,
be a bad judge defined differently in each era. Like the current era of tech debate might define you now as a bad judge if you're unable to keep up with what other tech judges can keep up with.
yeah,
And in every era, this has happened. I've seen paradigms forever say, I promise I'm not as tech as you think I am. I promise I'm not as flow as you think I am. And people still ignore this. I
yeah,
actually think it is strategic to ignore this. The reason I think that, unfortunately, is because if you push the envelope on what they are able to keep up with, and then you give them the ability to keep up with it retroactively, for example, a speech doc, then there will be so much social pressure or like sort of even like ontological like I identify as a good judge um,
yeah.
to comprehend everything that they will use that begrudgingly to adapt to you. And I think this is a problem because this is like the fuel in the engine of accelerating debate.
Yeah, a 1,000%. And I think so often I feel like it's a little bit. I'm forgetting the exact like idiom that I want to use, but I think it's a little bit it's almost like a game of chicken because I'm positive that there
Yeah.
are other judges that like feel this way, but no one is willing to like stand
Yeah.
on business and say like no. So now like we're all just pushing each other.
Yeah.
Um Even I think often like maybe less like younger people, but for sure, like I will see people like who were in my grade and now we're judging like the same super, super tech debates. And I'm always like, are we really happy right now? Like,
Yeah.
no. But
We
yeah, I think like no one, and the thing is that the social pressure like totally gets to you. And I think that it gets to people more of like honestly, I feel like if right now like you put me in TOC, like maybe I wouldn't care. But I think that when you're someone who is like in the circuit and like coaching a team and very regularly, like often going to tournaments, and you judge a lot and people interact with you a lot, it totally does get to you, especially when I think like when I started like hearing people say that I was like a really good judge and a very like technical judge, like it like it's like, oh, okay. But then yeah, now, um, or like I actually, and one of the things that I would admit is that like I'm not that actually good at like judging progressive debate because it really was not something that I had a ton of experience in. And yeah, then, I heard, someone be like, her RFD and TOC semis was incompetent. And I was like, well,
Damn.
it was.
It hurts. Yeah. I feel like people don't understand. Like, we're still humans. We still.
Judges are people too.
Damn, that sucks. And also, like, there are material implications of this. Like, one of the main ways that people find like students to coach is because they're known for having good judging. Like, if you are like, I've gotten several students come up to me and ask me for coaching after I gave a particularly good RFT. But if I stand on business, then my RFTs won't be seen as good anymore. And then it's like you lose money. Like, this is a material problem as well as a psychological problem.
For sure, it
It's weird.
is.
I feel like it's quite unfortunate because not only does it accelerate the event, it also allows for strategies that we probably all agree are bad. Especially this speech talk stuff, because I think it creates a separation between the ability for the judge to comprehend and the ability for the opponents to comprehend. And so then the strategy, the meta is becoming more and more to exploit that gap, to like do things that are only comprehensible if you have the speech doc and time to read it,
Yeah.
but not comprehensible in the round. And so it's like it's effectively the same strategy as if your judge speaks a different language. Like if I speak to my judge only in Spanish, and like all my speeches are in Spanish, then the judge understands everything I'm saying, but the opponents won't. That's like clearly unfair. But what we're doing is we're doing it in the context of speech docs now. It's like you have a trilingual judge, and like one team is speaking Spanish, and the other team is speaking Chinese, and neither of them understand each other, and the judge understands all of them. It's like it doesn't make any sense. I feel like it's awful because it breaks down debate as a communication activity, but it also breaks down the strategy game of technical debate. Like you can't be a strategic debater if you can't understand what the other side is saying. Yeah, that's my
Yes.
rant, I guess. Uh, okay. I have a few more questions. The one that you've probably been waiting for. What are your biggest hot takes?
Okay. I'll do a really quick hot take just
Okay.
because I think it's got a it follows along with everything, and then I'll do my real hot take.
Okay, okay.
But a quick hot take is that, to quote Kamala Harris, you think you just fell out of a coconut tree. You exist in the context of all of which you live and what came before you. Is that people need to understand judges in the context of where they are coming from. And PF has changed so rapidly in the past couple of years that we actually do need to adapt to judges. And or maybe not. If we everything that you and that people can just choose not to adapt to judges. If that's your strategy, fair enough. Sure. But I think that there are certainly people who are not adapting and are then losing because they don't understand that 2022 graduate tech debater is very different from 2023 graduated tech debater, from 2024 graduated tech debater, from apparently 2025 graduated debater, where we're no longer reading like topicality on the AF. And I think that people need to like I don't know what people need to do to like learn this history. But people need to understand that people are coming from very different backgrounds and that you actually do need to adapt to judges. So there are certainly people I'm positive who have like been dropped by me because they read things that like I don't understand. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like or like I like actually like have once totally like I like missed a response. I totally did. And I kind of like got shit for it after and I was like, you were going too fast for me. Like 2 years ago, yeah, yes, I was good at debate and like now I coach, but like you need to understand me.
Yeah.
So adaptation is good if you're trying to adapt. If it's your strategy to push the envelope, like hats off to you. But understand that you're doing that and don't just auto assume that because I got bids, like I can flow, a 1,500 word case without a doc.
Yeah.
Um, then my other hot take. Middle school debate is contributing to the rising technicality. And I'll broaden it to just be middle school debate. But also even I think that the rising level of like competitiveness at a younger age is what is contributing to like how techie debate is getting. Because I think it used to be that everyone starts pretty much from scratch in freshman year of high school. And when you're first starting, you can only speak so much, you can only cut, so much good evidence. You can only speak so quickly. You can only have as many technical debates as possible. You're not going to be flying every single weekend for the vast majority of people. And then as you get older, you probably get techer and techer, if you're on like the national circuit. And so I think that it kind of always like resets itself in a
Yeah.
sense because yes, like the seniors are very tech, but then, in the JV brackets, the younger people are not as tech or they're slowly getting there. But I think that part of what has made us so much techier is that people are starting a lot younger, or even when they're starting, they're getting a lot more competitive younger. And so they have so much more time to build up that techiness that and now when everyone is doing that it just like raises the bar because now everyone is getting techier and I think the reason as to why they're doing it is because and I swear to you right now I have like eighth graders that can read 1,000 word cases
That's crazy.
like
That's so
clear
wild.
and honestly and like some of them are not very like and I'm like we need to slow down we're not doing this well but there are people like middle schoolers who are like I'm like, you're good at tech debate, and like it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
they all have
that's
their
wild.
little like discords, and they all like judge each other, and they're like, it's like, I'm like, are you eighth graders or are you like TOC like contenders? Like the way that you act is very different from the way that your age is, and then as they all move into high school, like that, I think is contributing.
That makes sense. That's interesting. Um, I feel like there's another mechanism involved too, where like they're copying some of the stuff that the older
Oh,
people are doing.
100%. Like they're obviously all copying the older people. I just think that they have more time to like get good at the
Right,
copy.
right. And it means
Um,
that like it extends the cycle downwards. Like for example, how do I put this? Like the seniors in high school are doing this kind of innovation that is new in PF, and then that is going immediately down to the youngest middle schoolers who then are doing the most tech innovation, and now they like go up the ladder of more and more tech, and they have like an extra 3 years to go up the ladder, and so like
yes.
it's like if middle school is copying high school more than even like younger high school kids are copying high school, I think then
Yeah.
you like immediately push up the level of tech from the bottom as well as from the top. Like it used to be that PF was guided by the people at the top, kind of pulling everyone forward. But now it's like there's this new body that's being pulled from underneath that's like pushing people from underneath as well. That's weird.
Yes.
That's weird.
But this is my hot take. I don't even know how hot it is. I just think it's, it's an undiscovered take.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I feel like we see this historically in like policy debate as well. Like the same stuff happens. The high schoolers read the stuff off the wiki from the college debaters, and then that when they get into college, then they do new stuff. Interesting. Well,
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see where PF goes from here with all these like new middle like tech crazy demons coming out.
They they like really are crazy demons. Like I sometimes feel like my middle schoolers were are like more intense than like some of the like high schoolers like towards the end. Like they're like really, really intense. They scare me a little bit.
That's wild. Yeah, I feel like it's also such a competitive time that like you get into like serious game. I don't know.
Yeah, it is. It like worries me a little bit. Like I'm always kind of, I think, scared of like burnout because I
Yeah.
think that, you start really young and it's not even like, it's like you start so seriously, so
Yeah.
young. And then I'm always like, are you still going to be doing this in 7 years? And I mean, there are middle school debaters who, started like Ishan started in seventh grade and
Yeah.
like, but I don't think that like everyone is like that.
Right.
And so I started as a sophomore in high school, and low key, I honestly always think that that like was like really good for me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that
we'll
makes
see what
sense. Yeah, I
happens.
know a lot of people who started like super late and get really good. But they do, I think, different things. I feel like one of the problems, maybe I hesitate to call this a problem, but I think one of the problems of people starting really early is they get so deeply entrenched in the norms. Like their entire concept of debate arises solely out of what the debate they have experienced is, rather than out
Yeah,
of like a context of more mature logic going in. Like I feel like when people enter debate later, they do so with so much more context of like
yeah,
life, and then they seek to understand and justify the way the debate works. But when you start super young, it is just taught to you and you learn it, you know.
yeah,
You don't really like
100%.
interrogate it at all.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
Interesting. Well, we'll see what the future of PF looks like. I have a few. Okay, oh, wait, I gotta ask you this before I move on. You debated for Ransom Everglades. One thing that I think your
Let's say discourse voter right now.
Discourse, boo, I'm sorry, but we have to talk about it. I feel like to some extent this is responsible for some interesting trends that have arisen
I know,
semi-recently.
I know.
Um,
It's. I like think about what I've done, and I'm like, this is not what I meant to happen.
okay. Let's unpack this. What is a discourse voter? What is this thing that has grown from it? What are your thoughts?
So
Yeah.
a discourse voter is a type of pre-fiat argumentation, which is essentially that our argument is good and it's good to talk about these things. And that is an additional reason to vote for us to read it in front of more people and talk about these things. Um, and something that it gets me really upset about when I've seen it now is that it used to be a way like it was constructed as a way to like talk about things that we thought were important and serious, and the way that I read it in high school was often attached to arguments about like sex trafficking. And because you often needed some form of like framework or structural violence like analysis to get to be able to win against extinction level responses. And the way it warped and shifted was just that any topic became something important to talk about. And so now like I literally had in front of me pre-fiat extinction level,
Yeah, me too.
like we need to talk about extinction, and I was just like, I like can't do this. I have my paradigm that I won't vote on it, because I think it's crazy.
Yeah.
So that's what a discourse voter is. And that's how I think it started off with sex trafficking, and then it kind of became structural violence overall, and then it really warped into like anything. Anything could be something important to talk about. I feel like it kind of died though.
Yeah, it has recently.
Um, and my thoughts on this, I feel like I'm very jaded. And I want to be clear because I think that sometimes like people don't believe me, but like when this was constructed, like I really actually like believed in it. Like I really thought that like if we like talked about things, that this was important. And I think that I've become a lot more jaded since then. And I think that realistically, discourse voters have just become another tool in the toolbox. It is a strategic argument that is made in debate. I don't actually think that discourse does anything.
Damn, that's so sad.
I'm sorry to like the community for discourse voters and for my statements now.
I feel like I even have a lighter take than you.
Okay, what?
I think discourse can work. And I think actually, um, if there is a version of a discourse voter that I think I could find compelling, I think the problem is that the way that it is used and maybe the way it's been commodified is it makes strategic sense to condense the voter as much as possible to one line. So you
Yes.
effectively use it as a trick. It's like an auto round over if it's dropped.
Yes, this is definitely this is 100% true. Like when I look back in my like cases, like the discourse voter was like 400 words.
Yeah.
Like it was kind of like a somewhat and it kind of depended on like the judge and something like that, but it was definitely like a substantial like part of the argument and part of like every like single like round that we had. So I definitely will say that I think part of my like jadedness is like the way that I've seen it warp into.
That makes sense. I also think like arguably there's some good things that have come from it. Like I think a lot of these non-topical Ks about identity positions to some extent evolved out of this logic that you kind of
Like
pioneered.
talk about
Yeah,
this.
yeah, right. Or like, yeah, like some of the fem Ks that I see, they sound very familiar, you know.
Yeah. They do.
But I still think there probably are some fundamental problems with like the not the logic of discourse being an important thing, but the I think that the way that people read it sometimes, like some of the like discourse tricks, I think were I hesitate to call them tricks, but like in the ransom files, like the we win because we're more likely to talk about it after, or like we're the ones who
Yeah.
started it. Like that stuff, I think carries with it some implications for rounds that maybe are worse for discourse. Um,
Yeah. I agree. I agree.
Yeah, but in principle, I think this has the potential to be very productive.
Yes. I guess yeah. I would shift my like my original take to that is that yeah. And I will say like I've had lots of like kind of, taking it to the logical extremes of our, like arguments slash like discussions. Um there's a video somewhere of like me and my lab leaders like fighting about this my like second year out that our like kids like took. And I'm like we can never talk about this again. Um but yes, I will say that I think especially now, like when you really like from a more objective stance, the idea that like I talked about something first, so now I just win can really do like lead to some like kind of crazy like rabbit holes.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, last few questions. Let's see. Um, I have like maybe like 15 more minutes to
Okay.
get. So, first one, what do you think is the value of debate to you?
I think that I feel like there's nothing too crazy. But I think that debate has changed honestly probably like my life. That's so nerdy. Um, but
I mean,
I
it's
think that it
objectively
really,
true. Like,
yeah, I think that it really does teach you so much about the world. Just like being forced to like research different topics. And I don't think that you often realize it when you're in it, because you're basically like in this, little circle of people who also know lots about the world. And then when you like really talk to people who don't do debate, um, who just like don't know things, and you
yeah,
don't even realize like how much you just like subconsciously like learn. I remember like my freshman year, I took like an intro to international relations class, and we were like just like talking, and a couple like classes in, she like holds me back, and the professor is like how did you get so into IR? Like you know so much, like blah blah blah. And I was like, oh really? Like I did debate, and like you don't even just like you don't realize like truly like how much more we know about the world than other people do. And I think that not only in just like knowing about the world that I think is so important, but it has also informed so much of like I'm a poli sci major now in college, and specifically like in IR, and that is because of debate. And so I think that is really cool. I also think, of course, that it is about the friends that you make along the way. And I think that I have made like so many like lifelong, hopefully, friends because of this activity. And I've also just like had such like cool experiences. Both like, I mean, you flying across the country when you're in a high school or if you do college debate, you can turn that into like flying across the world, which is like insane. There are so many just like random memories that you kind of look back and have, or like I know that I really think that like in every major city, like if I like got stranded, that I would have somewhere to sleep. And not everyone can say that. So
Yeah, I feel like that's so cool. Like underrated benefit of debate for sure.
oh, and I've totally like used it for sure. I've like done some crashes.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I intend to make a lot of use of it next year. I'm moving to Ecuador and I'm going to be flying to the US like every few weeks probably, maybe. And so, yeah, we'll see how it goes, but my plan is to like coach at different US tournaments and have my flights paid for so I could just
Right.
go to the US, coach a tournament, stay in the US for like a week and like I don't know, visit some friends, possibly debate friends, coach the next weekend and then fly back and make like a net profit from the trip. I feel like that would be really cool. But yeah, I agree with you. I feel like debate gives you a lot of underrated social connections and like networks and like good friends and people who
Oh, 100%. This, I don't know if this is actually, and like to be clear, maybe this isn't like the end all be all, and this should not be like the reason why you did debate. I think that debate, like social circles, are an intro to networking class that you cannot get anywhere else because the ability to go up to random people and kind of immediately get into conversations, like you immediately like reach out to people and like start these like relationships often like online and you build them very quickly and like being able to like meet lots of new people and immediately started doing this. Like it really is networking. And I feel like now that I'm moving slightly more like professionally, like I like realize like I'm incredibly comfortable and confident talking to strangers and making relationships very quickly. And I really think the debate has been part of that.
Yeah, yeah. I think in debate it's like for better or for worse, but certainly outside of debate it's for better.
Yes.
Totally agree. So for all of those benefits, what do you think are like the biggest harms of debate? And to what extent do you think these are inherent versus like things that can be changed?
Mm. I definitely think that there is like an aspect of debate that can really like we're like a community of haters. And there just like is often insane drama and it actually never goes away because now I'm in college debate and like we're haters. And like there's like still drama. Um and like I don't know, and I really do think that like it can play such a like huge like toll on like people's mental health.
Mhm.
Like I have spent like so many hours over the course of my life like writing out like giant like responses to the trauma or just like racking my brain about like how this is gonna like ruin my life. And I don't know. I feel like the ways to like minimize, like just be nice to each other. But I also think that something that I found really, really helpful, and that to be clear, I do not think that like everyone in debate has, is that I think that it's really important to still maintain active hobbies and communities outside of debate. And I think that debate is a game that like there's always like an opportunity cost of seemingly like not doing debate, and it always pushes you to do more and more and more, possibly more than what is actually healthy for you. And I think that's something that like really, really like kept me sane, and also often like kept me humble was like doing like a sport in high school until having another activity, another community of friends, and like maintaining those relationships as I've like done college debate because those are the people that you can just hang out with and like not focus on debate, and those are also the people that you can like talk to about your like debate drama who aren't involved in all situations objectively and either be like, okay, like I see where you're coming from, or sometimes they're like, you're being an idiot, like this is really ridiculous, like why are you stressing out about this, etc. So I think that I guess I don't know if that's a way that the community can like minimize the harms, but I think that that's something that like as individuals, you can do to minimize the harm that drama like plays in your life.
Yeah, 100%. That makes a lot of sense. Um, Yeah, what do you think are the biggest things that the community can do then? So that's one way that individuals can minimize some of this drama. And not just drama, but like what do you think the community can do to shift to become a better debate community?
Hmm. I think that I think that people are often very like insular in that part of this is like, our brain likes, creating in groups and out groups. Um, but I think that like truly like opening up to not opening up, but like being open to other people like entering a group and
Yeah,
whatnot, is actually like quite good. Especially I think that taking out like don't let your friends just be like the people that are good. Um, because and I think that when we have like friend groups that, and like social circles that have like a variety of different people in them, different skill levels or also just like different people like personality wise, that is probably the best way to like make everyone nicer and that like instead of having our like five-person cliques and like being very, very strict on these things, to kind of open up. And I definitely think that like some of like my like closest friends genuinely like in debate have often been people that I never thought that I would be friends with like at all whatsoever. And sometimes it was like they reaching out to me. Sometimes it was often like, maybe sometimes it was like me reaching out to them. Sometimes it was like I'm in a group and like someone else like brought someone in that I like would not have like let into the group. And then we like really hit it off. So like be open to like new friendships, I think,
yeah,
and just be nice to people. Like you don't know what other people are going through. And yeah, it's true that they don't know what you're going through. But I think that we allow people to be assholes like way
yeah,
too often. And it's
yeah.
like kind of
It is weird. I feel like every debate circle I've been in has been incredibly cliquey, and very much like a competitive reputation way, like along reputational lines. I don't know, like all the good people.
red circle.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Like, I don't know. It's kind of cringe to talk about, but this seems like like this is like in every single debate. Like I've seen this in college policy from what I've talked about with friends. I've seen this obviously in PF. I've seen this in APTA. It manifests itself in slightly different ways every time, but it is so real. It's like so tangible too. Like you can almost see the lines dividing people. Um,
Literally.
and I feel like, yeah, I think this advice is good. Like both if you are someone who is like just starting out and does not have a lot of competitive success, maybe. I think you should feel more comfortable talking to people who are like who you think are more successful than you. But
Yeah.
also, obviously, this is mostly the responsibility of people who are more competitively successful. Like, recognize that you have a unique social privilege in this environment as well. And like,
Yeah.
you should, I mean, I don't want to like, I don't want to paint this picture of you being like this savior who's extending a hand down to the downtrodden people without bids. You know,
I
like,
think, I think that like what I've realize is often that, and I think I've realized this very recently as someone who I think like for a decently probably too long of a period was like I'm not reppy. I'm just a girl. And then I basically talked to some, younger people who then like, opened up about maybe like experiences that they had with me like, months before or something like that. Or kind of getting like a third party look on how other people see me. And I think that they're like you don't have to like lend bring the arm down to the people without bids or whatever to make a really big impact in people's lives because I think that actually like and whether it's good or bad like people who have this like reputation, people like actually like do look up to you, even though that's like crazy to think about. And so really just like the smallest things that like you would never like think about of like being nice to someone or like, like how was your round and like literally like having a conversation with people like truly do like impact other people's lives.
yeah,
And I mean every little thing that we does impact other people's lives, but I don't think that, it's this like burden of like being nice, lending down the savior hands, but just like if we are just like nice and if we just like have smiles on our faces, I really think that like as a community is like the best way to like, just like make everyone's like lives better. It's just like individually making very small actions to like be warm and like be welcoming, etc.
Yeah, 100%. And it's also the actions you avoid. Like I think people underestimate the extent to which other people notice what they say.
Yeah,
Like we are all a little bit more public facing than we realize. Especially if you are someone who has a lot of like competitive reputation. It really small things that you say make a big difference, and they can create a big harm too. Like people follow your example. So if you're talking about other people as being like shit at debate or something, or like this person's so overrated, or like did you see they went like 2-5 at this tournament? Other people will see that as acceptable as well. Like that really has a very strong impact on normalizing that kind of behavior and that kind of view of the value of debate in a way that I think really takes away a lot of the value of debate. Like if everyone is thinking that way, it becomes much more of a zero-sum game. And it, I think, enhances a lot of the toxicity in it. And then those people grow up to have competitive reputation to do the same thing. And so I think that really like all, just little changes in the way that we discuss debate make a big, like have an outsized impact that ripples more than you would realize.
for sure.
Well, thank you so much for being on. I appreciate all of the discourse that we've had. Um, is there any last thing you want to, last wisdom you want to share with the audience before we go?
Last system. Um, at the end of the day, and I would never have said this to myself when I was actually in PF, but it really is just a game. And we should do all that we can to like think about the game and like think about how to get better. And like that is obviously a really important goal, but just remember to like drink water and eat and like go touch grass. Truly, truly, truly. And like walk your dog and like see your friends. Because like no matter what is happening at a specific bid tournament or at a specific 2 a.m. prep call that you need to change your entire case because like someone broke the topic on the wiki. That like we're all going to like move on. Not necessarily move on from debate, evidenced by the two of us here, but like you're like you will like wake up the next morning and everything will be fine. And yeah, that's probably my last words of wisdom. And I'm always a Facebook Messenger away.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all
But
of the discussion that you've had with me, for offering your very valuable time. And I will see you later.